Oh, man. I've been waiting to launch that thing for a long time. I think we nailed it. I think that might be our best. I mean, our new intro is pretty cool, but I think that one takes the cake.
That one's just a classic, right? That one, the other one's very hype, and I'm like bouncing in my seat, like ready to podcast. That one's I'm just like, yeah, we're going back to the old days.
It's fitting, and the guy wearing the t-shirt obviously knows what's up. This is That Helps No One FantasyCast on Crier Media. We have a special guest today. The one, the only Jim Coventry from fantasy football. You could just say that and everybody knows what you're talking about. But SiriusXM, Rotowire. Jim is like the guru of football. He knows pretty much everything there is to know about football because he has a teacher background. So he studied. He already knows like why guys run routes because they were raised in the Appalachian area or something of the U.S. and find it's like, well, based on this, like usually this would be the run they would do in high school and around the track. Like he just knows way too much extra, and that's why we bring him on because he's a super smart guy, but he's a lot of fun to talk to. Obviously, first and foremost, Jim, thank you so much for coming by. How is it going?
Things are great. Can't believe it's going to be week 15, fantasy football playoffs already. I'm already preparing myself for depression, though, because there's great audiences that I'm involved with. I feed off the energy of great people like yourselves and friends in the community. And I know that once the regular season ends, a lot of that falls off. So I'm preparing myself for a little bit of, a lull because I love this. Love the people.
I think the one thing that you may actually get an increase in, so everybody's asking your fantasy advice, right? And I'm sure we're going to like bleed you dry on that one at some point today. But now that it's the playoffs, a lot of us get a little bit too antsy, a little bit too cute about our lineups that have gotten us to the playoffs. And we're thinking, or if you're in the consolation round, maybe you're playing for a first pick or something. And everyone's like, well, I know my team, but now all of a sudden everything's changed. And now we're like, okay, do I start this guy over this guy, even though you've done the proper thing all season? So do you think you can offer more advice in the playoffs, or do you think it's still like, just trust your guys?
Well, here's the thing. What I do this time of the year is I try to eliminate mentally the names of the players. I want to look at what they've done for me all season. I want to say, well, Mike Evans having a great year, but like last year he wasn't. If I had another player on my roster who was great all season, well, I might say, if these guys don't have names, this player's produced all year. This one hasn't. They say start your studs, but if your stud hasn't been a stud all year and a different player's been a stud for you, don't get hung up in the name recognition. You know who's been carrying you. Can that player who hasn't done anything all year, who's been named, can he go off in the fantasy playoffs? Yes. But if it's at the expense of somebody who's carried you all year, you got to strongly consider saying, you know what? I realize a player could go off, but this is this is the dance partner who brought me.
Yeah. Like Jared Goff or Tommy DeVito. Like, where do you go?
There's such a strong, we roast Ted about this, who couldn't be on the show tonight. We roast him for this move all the time. He had such a great, this was undefeated season, first round of playoffs. He sits Mahomes for a better matchup with Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford throws a dud. So I think it's important to clarify that for people, that Jim is not saying to bench your studs when they've been producing for better matchups. But this year especially, I think this message of the names is going to be so important because we have such late injuries right now. We have guys coming back from injuries. I mean, I have Aaron Jones on our one league, and I'm not starting him there's almost no reason for me to start Aaron Jones because he has not been good. But can he go off? Well, of course he can. Like, he's that talented, he can go off. He hasn't shown it. Why would I think that's just going to magically happen for me because it's Aaron Jones?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
No, that's a great point. And before the second injury, I was willing to roll with Aaron Jones. I think you asked me a question about him before the second injury. It's like, look, they want to give him the ball. They want to make him. He seems to be healthy. He wasn't healthy all year. He was healthy then. Second injury, like you said, right now, no, I have zero trust. If I don't have any option, sure. But like you said, if you have a player who's been producing, Aaron Jones can't start for you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know who we're going to add to the fire list or the dud list was the Vikings Raiders game. That game helped absolutely nobody in pick'em, in fantasy. I took a nap actually because it was so exciting.
It didn't help anyone in life.
Oh, and I then in our pick'em at work, I actually forgot to pick a winner in that game, so it actually didn't even help me in the slightest because like I could have been 2 points back at first, and I just decided to forget it in my other drawer in my desk, and I realized that lying and just saying I picked the Vikings was wrong because even though I would have, it really wouldn't have made a difference either way because really everybody lost in that game. Obviously, Jim, I'm sure you enjoyed it immensely.
You know, that's when you're happy you have YouTube, the Sunday Ticket, multiple games going on at once. You could kind of watch it, but there's 4 other games, and it's like, you know, maybe a little more of my attention is going to shift to those other directions. And so, yeah, that keeps you from missing, you know, if you have the only game you were watching, if you were living in a market and that was it, yeah, that'd be a brutal afternoon.
And we've had those Sundays, right, where, you know, if you don't have Sunday Ticket, like myself, and or Red Zone or whatever, and you know you end up getting that. It happens to be that 1 week where there's only one game on in the morning, or the 2 afternoon games, and the other game's just as bad. And you're like, well, what do I do? Like grocery shopping, I guess. Just awful.
I was thinking about this, especially after that 3-0 game, but maybe there's a little bit of recency bias in this season being the season we're talking about. We had a 3-0 game. We had a 6-0 game. I think there was like a 12-10 game. There was a 7. Like there's been a lot of like under 20 combined points, and not just like a one-off where it's like, oh my gosh, that's a really random game. Maybe there was like a monsoon or something while they were trying to play. Like they're all NFL caliber teams. You think you get 2 like dud teams that would just like destroy each other. I can't remember a time where we had this many poor games, and especially on the primetime slots, like those Thursday games. My gosh, there's nothing I would actually rather drive my daughter to Embers and just stay in the parking lot than watch those games at this point.
You know, there are 3 factors that are playing into the season. The first one are the referees. It's a league directive. It's clear. The league directive is they're calling more ineligible downfield. There are more offsides and more holding calls. And we know this. Penalties quickly thwart drives. Referees were much more liberal in calling these calls against the offense. They had to be fairly egregious. Now, those penalties are derailing offenses quickly. The second issue is the league is always an ongoing chess match. Really, Patrick Mahomes and then a little bit later, Jamar Chase specifically pushed the league to a lot more too high safety looks. So instead of having 1 safety down for the run and 1 back for the pass, you were putting 2 back. The goal was to limit the explosive plays. Just keep things underneath, make teams matriculate out drives. Well, now when you're going through that aspect and you're also getting penalties, you derail drives. Here's the other thing. Here was the twist this year. The 2 high's been around a couple of years. The twist this year. In the offseason, defensive coordinators, they work together. A lot of them work together. They have conferences. They talk about league trends. They learned different approaches on how to stop the run with fewer bodies in the box. We're still seeing 6- and 7-man boxes. But the stunts they're running, the post-snap movement is stifling the running game. So the running game is not having success. There is one team in the league that's stunning us with the success they're having. It's the Rams. What are the Rams doing? A lot of teams run zone runs, pin pull runs. The Rams, they are going what we call duo, downhill running. What Sean McVay's a genius. He sees things as they're unfolding in real time. He doesn't have to wait to react. He saw what defenses were doing, how they were shooting gaps. The way to beat it is to have a duo concept get downhill. Kyron Williams fit perfectly with that, putting up numbers because Sean McVay is exploiting the system. And then the final thing that's keeping scoring down, yes, it's the same amount of quarterbacks that we saw last year and this amount of games at a time. But there are more games played by the backups. There are more long-term injuries. Just look at the weekly starting list of quarterbacks literally for the last month and a half. It's worried.
Yeah, it's awful. And that was going to get me into my next point. And I'm so happy we have you because these are the kind of topics I love bringing up. Tommy DeVito, I mean, we were a fan of him. I was doing some research today. Steve, we first brought him up in week 9 when he scored that first rushing TD. When Tyrod was playing, like, geez, it feels like forever ago. And then he's become like kind of a cult joke on the show, but only because like it's one of those funny stories. Like, I guess we should talk about him again, find a way to get him on the show. And now he's a starting quarterback so far for the New York Giants. The big question, I mean, there's no way that's actually his agent, but apparently it is. That guy dressed up like a character. My big question, I threw this in our group chat this afternoon. Yeah, it's a little bit of this, say. Is this like a one hit wonder, or do you see the Giants seriously considering like maybe Tommy DeVito? Like I'm kind of joking, but I'm kind of serious. Like, is there a world where Tommy DeVito is a starting quarterback in the NFL?
Only if he plays for Brian Daboll. It won't be for long. Look, Brian Daboll made Daniel Jones look functional last year. Do we forget Daniel Jones threw like 15 touchdown passes last year? I said 15 in 16 games. And yet he ran for 700 yards, smoke and mirrors. They make the playoffs. All of a sudden, Tommy DeVito's numbers aren't good. 4 of the 5 games, he's under 200 yards passing, right? But the one game he runs for 41 yards, runs for 71 last night. The other game's not much. He's got 2 multi-touchdown games. It's Brian Daboll. The dude is one of the genius coaches. Because the teams already knew what to expect in the Daniel Jones offense. Daboll was not getting any more smoke and mirrors out of that. But this is a new character. And Daboll was able to push different levers. The ball's not going to the same receiver every game. Hyatt had a game. And Wandale had a game yesterday, and Bellinger had a couple games where he was so. And of course, Barkley's Superman. The whole defense are geared up for him, and most games he's cashing the check. And the defense is playing well enough. It's a very aggressive defense, and they've gotten better over the course of the season. So all this considered. And, in the game where DeVito played well, it was Washington. Washington traded away their 2 pass rushers. Their whole spirit was broken defensively, and that's where he gets to 246-3. But yeah, it's a gimmick. It'll work for a while.
So he's like the Wildcat offense, basically.
He's like the shiny new toy, man. That's
I mean,
really
it's fun. It is so fun. One of
my favorite things about this show is once a season, Ryan hedges to these shiny new toys, and I love how excited last year was Mike White season. He's like, guys,
let's not forget about Mike White season. I was just talking about him yesterday. Oh no, today we were talking about like, man, I sure wish it was still Mike White season, and it's not anymore. That's okay.
It's not like Tommy DeVito,
but it's Joe Flacco season.
That's true. It is Joe Flacco.
Hey, if you want to talk about Joe Flacco season, he's always been elite, and now it's just coming back through. No,
he's not shiny. He's not new. I'll give him that.
Yeah, he's something. He's serviceable.
One thing I did notice, I didn't watch a whole lot of the Giants game, but one thing I thought Tommy DeVito actually did well, and you're right, like he's that gimmick with Brian Daboll in terms of he's letting these guys run. So like his numbers look good when he can run for 75 to 100 yards, but all of his passes are kind of, I mean, yeah, of course you're going to have a pass where he rolls out to the right, touchdown pass back corner. It looks beautiful. Well, he's an NFL quarterback. They can all do that. He just won't do it consistently. He is Joe Burrowing that offense better than could ever. Like, check it down to somebody for 4 or 5 yards. Let them get 4 or 5 more yards. Like, look at his yards per target. It is not that good. He's literally a shiny new toy that's going to dismantle very, very quickly. But it's a fun storyline the NFL can run with for a week or two.
Yeah, it's they moved on. Go figure. Hey, they moved on from Taylor Swift, and now they're on to Tommy DeVito. Who would have thought there'd be that transition? Hey, like, yeah, we're done with that story. Like the most popular person on the planet to the guy's like, let's get some chicken cutlets. Hey,
Tommy Cutlets.
and then finally, these two things I'm going to bring up. First and foremost, Bill Belichick appears to be done with the New England Patriots after what feels like an eternity. He had a good run, and I think everybody realizes that, and it's time for him to move on. And he's probably going to still find great success somewhere else. And I mean, all the power to him. Obviously, Tom Brady's gone. He's done his thing. We'll get into Tom in a second. But Jim, you've watched a lot of football, as we have. What do you see Bill doing in the following season? Do you see him even taking a season off, or do you think he's right back in next year?
He's too old to take a season off. He can't have that much more time.
That's
but
true.
he can roll right into something else as long as that lasts. I don't see him stepping away unless he's permanently stepping away. And I don't know what his ego is like, but if his ego is big, he needs to do one more thing before he retires, because the question will be over his legacy since he's done nothing without Brady. And Rex Ryan went off on media like a week or two ago. It wasn't the Patriot way. It wasn't the Belichick. It was the Brady way. They had Tom Brady. And now Brady went somewhere else. Tampa wins a Super Bowl, and Belichick just kind of flailing around. Now we see what's up. Now, Belichick, the GM, hurt the franchise more than Belichick, the coach. I'm going to say that for sure, because not GM quality. Did terrible draft picks, wide receivers, bust after bust. But that said, if he has an ego, he has to go somewhere and do something, or that question will be over. The wins will be there, the Super Bowls will be there, but the question will always be, who won them?
I think a lot of people want him. If his ego's there, I'm sure a lot of, again, there's one guy left, and you think, if we could get Belichick for even one season or two seasons, I mean, how many teams would probably take a chance on that? Realistic. I mean, it's the NFL. Look how many guys have started at quarterback, guys we've forgotten about, and they still are getting chances. Offensive coordinators that continue to get second and third chances after they get, they go back to the job they're good at, and we're going to offer this guy a head coaching job again, and they just fizzle out. I could see him maybe getting a super team going for a coaching staff for maybe a season or two, and just throwing it all out there, and maybe, I don't know.
How about the Jets with Aaron Rodgers?
Well, that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
he wins the Super Bowl there, because as great as Saleh is, there is no better defensive coach than Belichick. And if Aaron Rodgers can play a healthy season with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, and they bring in a couple linemen, offensive linemen in free agency, Belichick's winning a Super Bowl there.
The only other one I thought of, I was trying to think of it, because guess what? Bill Belichick is not going to a rebuild team. He is not taking over one of those, 2-win teams that's let's rebuild from the ground up. He just doesn't have enough time. So I don't think that they want to push Saleh out enough. I think it would work. The only other place that made sense to me is LA and the Chargers.
And there's been a lot of smoke on that one. Yeah.
Right. Brandon Staley's been kind of in the hot seat. He's got a quarterback. It doesn't really matter what a lot of people are saying about Justin Herbert. He's got pieces around him. That defense is nasty when it's healthy. And oh my goodness, it would be a top 3 defense with Belichick running it. Who does he get to bring in for the offensive side of the ball? That would determine to me whether he wins a Super Bowl there or not.
Well, yeah, and if he had gone to the Jets, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to let anybody push him around. So it'd be Aaron Rodgers be okay, you call what you want. I'm audibling to whatever I want. Garrett Wilson, you're getting that 1,700 yards you would have had this season, right?
And then to tie into that, today was the release date, I believe, of Bowman Draft, which is a baseball product for sports cards. And I've been waiting although I probably don't have the bank account to make this happen. I've been waiting since February when they announced the Tom Brady Montreal Expos rookie card. It is now officially out. There's a handful of options. If you guys have seen the commercial that came out today, it's incredible. I'll have to find a link and send it to you guys if you haven't. But anyway, Tom Brady in an Expos jersey. There's some autograph cards. Like, it's a big deal in the sports cards industry. And there's parallels and refractors and all the words that I've tried to remember since I was a kid. But this is a big deal. This is one of those, if you're a collector, this is one of those cards you want to get your hands on. It might cost you a little bit. You're better off buying boxes of cards than going and buying the card itself, I'm sure. But pretty cool. And it's kind of funny, the day that they do announce Bill Belichick, Tom Brady's getting some buzz for something he never did, which I think is pretty cool. So, and then I think Mitchell Ness released a Montreal Expos Brady jersey today as well. So kind of cool, the two parallels of both of those guys today. But Jim, are you, did you collect cards in your day?
Not seriously. I had bought some baseball cards, but I never really collected them seriously. But one thing about Brady, he's a retired baseball player, Hall of Fame. Who is his baseball player equivalent?
Oh,
I'll just say he's a National League player. I don't remember what year he retired, but he's been out of the game less than 15 years.
Oh, man.
And I'll give you one more, a pitcher.
Well, that made sense. I'm going to say, oh, man.
Are we talking about
Kershaw?
like Randy
Like
Johnson?
Clayton Kershaw?
No.
Clayton Kershaw? No, he's still playing.
Brady wasn't a power player. We got to think of the most accurate, most specific, most controlled, most dominant.
Tim
Not
Lincecum.
like
Atlanta Braves.
Maddox? Okay.
Greg Maddux. Any pitch, any speed, any location. That was Tom Brady, right?
That makes sense.
Man, he was so
You're going to end up seeing like a dual card of that too. It's going to happen. And now he'll be involved on the baseball side for years and years and years. And everybody's going to want Tom Brady baseball cards now, which, hey, all the power to you. There's money to be made out there. So without further ado, I think it's time we get to our feature segment brought to you by Kelly O'Brien's in Kelowna. Jim, you know what time it is. It's time for THNO Stars with our... Oh, wrong button. Sorry. There we go. I kind of have that figured out. Where I got to get back to my... Oh, no. There we go. I got it figured out. I did new buttons today, so everything's a little bit off. THNO Stars with our boy Jody. And you know what? We're going to give this to Jim to start off. Jim, who is your THNO for this week? I feel like it's something I would love to say every week to you, but who do you got?
Randall Cobb.
Oh, boy.
Hey, the Jets never score touchdowns. They went like 40 drives at one point without scoring. You're waiting for Garrett Wilson to score, Breece Hall to score. Randall Cobb on the season had 3 catches for 20 yards. He had played 7 snaps since week 6. Didn't even know he was active for this game because he's been inactive for most of them. What does he do? He catches a 15-yard touchdown pass against the Texans. And that's at the point where the game was super low scoring. It got to be off the rails in the second half. But that helped no one.
Let's roll that clip.
Haul the back, 1st and 10. Underneath they go. That's going to be a touchdown. And it's grabbed by Randall Cobb on his 4th.
Unbelievable.
And it broke the scoreless tie. That was the first touch. I'm like, seriously? Randall Cobb.
Everyone goes, I remember him. Wait, what? Was he even playing?
He still plays football. I thought he went out when Aaron Rodgers went out. He was like, no, we're a package team. I'm cutting my Achilles too.
He was on the active roster, I'm pretty sure. We'll get Ted's out of the way here. He didn't even give me a good write-up, so we can't even make fun of him this week, Steve.
I'll always make fun of him.
I mean, if you want to throw out a pretty good little, snippet, by all means. So he's got Davis Allen this week. Steve, do you have any questions, comments?
You know what? Being that I'm a Ravens fan and I watched that game, a couple things hurt. One, hearing Jim talk about Kyron Williams just downhill running, because I was like, are you kidding me? This is the most basic of run patterns. Like, you guys have been this formidable defense all year, and you're letting this guy just like find a gap and go. Like, it's so simple. The other thing was watching Davis Allen look like a legitimate tight end. Like he's got that big, tall body. He had a little bit of fire to him as well. And I was like, the first time he caught it, I was like, wait, Higbee's out. Who is that? And I had to like look it up. I was like, Davis Allen. Like what is that? That's such a weird name. It's like 2 first names.
I've got 2 first names.
Yeah, you never trust guys with 2.
But I'm also that's a fair point. I am pretty weird. So let's roll that clip here.
Stafford slings one sidearm. It's Davis Allen. He's got his first NFL touch.
He's a big dude.
Yeah, 6'6", 245.
Man,
I had to look it up.
He's
a rookie this year. Maybe he's the future of like where the Rams want to go to, get that one other Super Bowl ring before Stafford calls it quits, or I don't know. He looked like a legitimate tight end that I'd never heard his name in my entire life. So he definitely helped no one. 0% rostered, obviously.
He had a Gronk kind of look to him too, same number, but he had, did you know, like just kind of that towering upper body, just kind of bowls his way in, kind of a Gronk look without like the flamboyancy, but to each their own. Steve, let's keep it rolling with you. Who is your THNO this week?
Now I'm all fired up. Another person that another rookie that I'd never really heard of, Chase Brown, not Jamar Chase, but Chase Brown, from Jake Browning, if that could get any more confusing with name plays in there.
If they were on the Browns, that would have been the trifecta.
Paul Brown Stadium.
That's true. That's true. I think Steve had a freeze there. Oh, there we go. You're back.
Rookie. He's rostered in 13% of leagues, actually. Obviously, as the handcuff to Joey Mixon. 2% of people started him. So good for you, 2% of people who thought for a second, you know what? He's going to poach a touchdown out of this. Other than that, it helped no one.
And that's too bad. But you know what? You know who does help us? Because I got a clip.
Browning dumps it off underneath. He's got Chase Brown. He's the speedster. He's got daylight inside the 30. One man to beat. Oh, he makes a move into the end zone. Touchdown, Bengals.
You know who that reminded me of? Tavon Austin. Small little guy, just had some speed, little wheels there, and he just absolutely started rolling. That was a big run too. Steve looks like he's having a few little video. There you go. You're back, kind of, sort of, maybe. Good pick, Steve. Good pick.
Tell you what's frustrating about Chase Brown. I had a bunch of July best ball shares of Chase Brown. He's finally cashing in. Those teams are all eliminated by now. But yeah, because Joe Mixon had the legal problems, and I didn't think they were gonna let him go maybe. And they brought him back. It's like, man, because Chase Brown, he's a player I really, really loved coming out of the draft out of Illinois.
He had himself a little bit of run, and I mean, we're late in the season now, so these are all the guys you have to start getting used to hearing their names. Where you're going to start scraping the bottom of the barrel or the middle of the barrel just to get whatever you can out of these rosters, but all the same. And finally, to me, I took this guy. I made sure that I had him right away as soon as he scored because I didn't want Ted to take him. And there's a reason I did this. David Bell, 0% owned, 0% started. You're among the elite when Joe Flacco targets you 3 times, but you only need 1 catch to make it matter. And that's a 41-yard score. Ted missed out on a beauty pick this week from the Browns. I was smart enough to make sure that I got it because why? Because I'm the star of the show. No, I'm just kidding. I made sure that I had this. If anybody that sees this show, they know that Ted always takes a Cleveland Brown, and it was my turn to shine. Let's roll the clip.
They're going to snap it. Flacco throws. Open man. Could go. David Bell. Touchdown. A brilliant play call. And the Browns get it done.
Let's not forget, that was a 4th and 3 play, so they made something out of nothing. Big play for David Bell. Good on him. I had it as Dav
My,
Bell.
my favorite part of that.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say that my favorite part of that whole clip was that if you listen to the announcer, he's like, David Bell, he could go. And you're looking around and you're like, there's nobody within. What do you mean he could go? He's going to go. Like,
yeah, he's going to.
There's no other person on the field, though, according to what the camera was showing. Like,
he's trying to keep people interested, I think.
It's not me running because I would have been caught.
Yeah, exactly. I think most of us would have had, like, you get the odd one, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be okay. Before we get into our next...
One guy in slow motion running down the field, like, he could get caught. No, he's going to get caught also. Okay,
so we've got a few more segments, but we'll split it up for a second, and because I mean, a few people are just antsy to hear Jim give some fantasy advice. This is Dev from our league. I'm hopefully not playing him this week. Is it good to start DK Metcalf versus the Cowboys?
Well, DK Metcalf just played the Cowboys and went off on him a couple weeks ago. They're playing Philly.
Oh, he says he's got the boy. I was going to say he's this week. Oh, this week, boys. I apologize. Let's pretend I read that properly. Not the Cowboys.
So the deal with Metcalf right now, Geno Smith apparently has a 2-week injury, and Drew Lock did get him a touchdown. There's that. And the Philly corners are not playing great. Now, James Bradbury theoretically is a decent matchup for the style of player Metcalf is. He can't really run like he did, but he's physical. You can start Metcalf, but the expectation in this game is that he gets you 50 yards, and then it's like a 40% chance he gets a touchdown. So you frame it that way. And if that does it for you, depending on your lineup, then go ahead and play him. But I don't think there's a big upside potential here because the other thing is Philly does have the pass rush they had last year, but they're probably going to put some heat on the quarterback, especially if Geno plays and he's limited, but Drew Lock also. So there's that. So
he's saying he's got Sutton, Ridley, or Palmer, and then he also has Eckley, Henry, and Hall in his lineup. So his flex is Hall, he's saying. So those are all the options in there. So I think he's just like, should he roll with DK instead of one, I'm guessing, Sutton, Ridley, or Palmer. So
I would play him over Palmer. I'd play him over Ridley. Those for sure. Play him over both of those for sure.
And then maybe roll the dice on. I mean, that's the one thing too. I mean, I think we get to overthink some of these, and Cortland Sutton's having a pretty good little run now with the surprisingly good Denver Broncos. I'm Ron Burgundy. So it just doesn't make any sense when you have to start saying, hey, yeah, I'm picking the Broncos to win. You know, you're at a different point in the season. So realize
Cortland Sutton is getting like 3 catches in most games and he's cashing for fantasy. Every week it's a bomb almost. Every week it's a touchdown almost. And so he'll get 3 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown and he cashes. There's a couple weeks he's had more, but it's not been a lot more. It's you look at the box scores, 3s, then some 4s and 5s. He had 1 or 2 where he had quite a few catches. Completely unsustainable, but maybe he sustains it for 5 more games or 3 more games for the fantasy playoffs.
Who knows? I mean, I'm thinking it happens just based on how this season has been. Like, I'm cashing all the checks that if they don't make sense, it's likely going to pay off for you this season. Like I was saying to the guys last night, I was playing Ted in the last game of the season for me to make the playoffs. I think he's in. And I'm like, I was up by like 31 points, and he had Waddle. He had who did he have for Green Bay there?
and Wicks.
That's right. And I'm like, okay, if each of those guys gets like under 100 yards, or at least, 1 or 2 of them maybe gets a touchdown, I'm okay. Had I had Tommy DeVito in there, I still actually would have lost, but I would have been by 2 instead of by like 10. So I'm like I said, if something weird's out there, you should be cashing it right now, because things just don't make sense. And the guys that are doing all the talking right now are the ones we probably weren't even talking about 8 weeks ago. Everybody's just recently catching up. So, again, the Denver Broncos, who would have thought that maybe Russ is a good start for the fantasy playoffs? Honestly, I didn't.
They run the ball. They're very successful. Russell get his usually one touchdown, occasionally two. Yardage isn't real high. If you're in a 2-quarterback league, you're starting him. He's getting his 30 or so yards rushing too, which certainly helps. But man, you could see he has a little more athleticism than last year. He lost some weight. He's running a little bit. He still gets caught from behind a lot, but they don't want him throwing the ball until they have to. But when they do, chuck it up to Sutton, and nothing but beautiful things have been happening.
Yeah, he's making some magic. We got a couple questions here. This one from sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, when you have a guy like Cortland Sutton and he's producing this year, I mean, it's kind of like the opposite argument to the guy who's not producing. Why would you start him? Why would you not start the guy? Of course, it's not sustainable. I don't think he's a keeper at 28 years old, but he's putting up numbers every single week. He has Detroit, New England, and the Chargers as his fantasy playoff match. That's why I wanted to keep him. The other part of that question with his, who would you start him over? I think injuries are playing a huge part in this. Ridley is not going to have Kirk. Lawrence seems to be banged up slightly. His mobility isn't what it was before that ankle. They weren't sure if he was going to be out for a while. And then Palmer, they just put Justin Herbert on IR today. I don't know that you want to like roll your fantasy season on either of those guys. Like I would take Palmer out completely. Like he's not startable in any league. Ridley's got to be your flex unless you can do something else in there. I didn't even see. Oh, so Hall is his flex, obviously. You're not taking out Henry. You're not taking out Eckler. But Palmer is like not startable at all, in my opinion, without Justin Herbert.
DK Metcalf's finally got, he's climbing the shelf system like Jim talked about last year. So we figured it out. We finally figured it out. So this is a question from our boy Ted. He couldn't make it, but he wanted to make sure that he could get this in. He says, we've already had a front row seat to some serious contributions from this year's rookie receiver class with dudes like Cousin Puka, Tank Dell, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, and Jaden Reed, all arriving on the scene as fantasy relevant options or full on week to week starters. But there's still a bunch of wideouts dripping with potential. In true THNO style, he says, who's a wideout or two that you would consider a sneaky ad? I mean, you've got one, but beyond the show, I guess. While maybe not so useful for this year's playoffs, could be a nice stash ahead of the offseason as a sleeper breakout candidate. That's a lot of words I just have to say. I apologize.
I'm going to reference Cedric Tillman right away. When they trade away Donovan Peoples-Jones in Cleveland, that position he plays mostly a blocking role, and he plays over 80% of the snaps, so you don't see him show up big in the box scores. But when Joe Flacco arrived, they went from a team that was throwing the ball as little as possible. Flacco's throwing like 45 passes a game. Well, Tillman is targets 5, 6, and a 4. Yardage hasn't been great, but he had a 4 for 55 last week. He's a talented player. He was a player that a lot of people in the preseason thought he could work his way into the rotation, and that hasn't happened yet. And Amari Cooper is still the guy, and David Njoku as tight end is still the guy. But down the stretch in a super deep league, and like you said, for the future, Cedric Tillman could be that guy that's up to that outside of all those productive rookie receivers.
There you go. Ted. Oh, sorry. It says signed. My cupboards are empty. Please send help. AKA Ted.
Oh, he'll be happy as a Cleveland Brown. I said.
Yeah, exactly. It's you're speaking to him.
Ryan, you need to go put in a waiver claim for him now so that you can take him, and then Ryan just got bounced from the playoffs. Obviously, this is the time.
I'm in the first overall playoff.
Go get rid of anybody of any value and pick up these lotto tickets that we've been referencing all season long, especially if it's a guy like Ted Wong, who is a Cleveland Browns fan, is going to listen to this show, not tonight, because he'll have something else going on. And he's going to see that waiver claim come in the morning and be like, Ryan, why did you go add that guy? Like, why Tillman? Well, you should watch the show, or you should show up to the show, Ted, because now you have just lost possibly a person for next year.
Yeah, I'm currently making this happen right now. So.
Fabulous.
Well,
Ryan's doing that. I can ask the next question.
Levis 501 is going to be off my roster, so thank you, Jim. I appreciate that.
It looks like we have a question from Admiral Nida. Interesting name. Would you start James Conner versus San Francisco, or claim off waivers and start Ty Chandler at Cincinnati, Foreman at Cleveland, Odell at Jacksonville in a standard league? Interesting.
I tell you what, James Conner, look, and Admiral's on my YouTube show frequently, comes on and visits. Conner was a great player, and it was great he had the game in Pittsburgh that he had. But they haven't been getting the most out of him. He's not getting productive receptions. Now, he did get the 2 goal line carries, but I really think they forced him that ball because he was in Pittsburgh. I think that was a big deal to him because Kyler Murray had stole 2 the prior weeks. So against the 49ers, probably not feeling it. Now, who was the last player in the question that you asked? Because that's the players that tell him to start. I can't remember who it was as I was.
Odell against Jacksonville?
Yeah, Odell Beckham right now. Look, last week I made a point to tell people to start Beckham. I called him a flex with big upside. He's running double moves again. He's getting downfield. Lamar Jackson clearly has the ability to get him the ball. Jacksonville's been good against the pass all year. They got safety issues. And handling Odell, that's a different beast. And Darius Williams is playing good corner. Not Odell Beckham is too much of a veteran to be able to blow him away. And they've been without their other corner, Tyson Campbell, for a couple of weeks. So even if he comes back, my guess he's not close to 100%. Yeah, Beckham's playing well the last month. I'd play Beckham.
There you go.
Yeah, and especially, obviously, you watch every Ravens snap. They are starting to double in on Zay Flowers because he is just lighting it up underneath, on the side. Isaiah Likely is also taking those snaps, those looks. Defenses are really weary of him because of how much athletic upside he is. Their run game can explode out of nowhere. And Odell has been he's just been feasting on these opportunities where he's like, oh my gosh, I'm getting single coverage. I might be 31 years old, but it's finally happened. I'm getting single coverage, no safety help. This is the best. Let's go.
It's fun to watch. I mean, he's a fun player to watch, and the fact that he's getting those options right now, I think, is kind of cool to see. That looks like he's playing healthy, and a healthy OBJ is dangerous for a lot of defenses. Guys, we're going to get to a few other of your questions in a bit. We got to keep the show going as well. Next segment. I know Jim, he's just chomping at the bit. This one. Did I go right? Sleepy ad. See, we keep it going, man. I got all these little secrets here. So, sleepy ads. Jim, who is your ad of the week?
It ended up serving a dual purpose. The last question you asked.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So for the future, it was Tillman. But again, if you're in a deeper league, if you're in a 10-team league, then you're not adding Cedric Tillman. But if you're in a deeper league and there's injuries and you just got to get somebody in there for points, again, everybody has different league sizes, right? But that deeper league, so sleepy at, Cedric Tillman, nobody beyond him. But again, with Flacco throwing the ball 45 times a game, he plays 80% of the snaps. He could fall into some catches like the 4 for 55 from last week.
Definitely. Steve, who's your ad?
This one is a little weird for me. I don't really like adding AFC North people.
We're going to clip this.
Yeah, go for it. We're live. I'm going Jake Browning. I said last week to start Jordan Love because it was either him, Flacco, or Browning. And man, could I have not been more wrong on that one. Jordan Love was not that great. I don't know that anybody saw those Monday night games going the way they did. As a Ravens fan, I'm like, yeah, let's go Tennessee. You can beat Miami. Oh my gosh, you can beat. No, you're giving the game away. Oh my gosh, you can beat Miami again. Oh my gosh, you beat Miami. It was such a roller coaster. Jordan Love sucked or was not that great. Joe Flacco was throwing the ball everywhere. Browning was. I kind of alluded to this with Tommy DeVito playing a style like they want, or they in Cincinnati that they play with Joe Burrow. I think Jake Browning is playing the perfect style of backup for how that offense is run. He's not asked to do these deep shots, these kind of intricate throws. Everything is underneath. I mean, look at the THNO clip that you ran. It was a screen for 41 yards. I put in our Google Docs. Unfortunately, he looks to be stepping in seamlessly for Joe Burrow. He's worth a start again, especially since I have Justin Herbert in my one league without a backup quarterback at all. Stupid me. And I'm like, what do I do? Do I go Flacco? Do I go Browning? Is Russell Wilson there? Like, is Matthew Stafford there? Like, I am grasping at straws. So I think Jake Browning is probably a good add, maybe as a backup in case things go bad. I don't love his playoff matchups, but I like the way he's running that offense in terms of getting production there. He's throwing for almost over 300 yards a game in his last two, I think, or maybe he was close to 300 yards. But he's not turning the ball over that much. So I would start him. He's also getting rushing touchdowns, which is a THNO in of itself there.
I like that pick. The fact that you're a Ravens fan and the fact that you featured a Bengal on the show. So
I know I skipped over Joe Flacco just because I can't. I love him. It just hurts my heart and soul because I have his jersey over in the here, and it's
the Jets. I'm going to go up. So Dante Foreman, 41%. Oh, now this isn't like super sleepy, but it's kind of sleepy. I hate to say this, that I'm telling you to add him, because I always say don't hitch your wagon to any Chicago Bear, but maybe use some fairly durable rope in this case. So you're not going to be using a hitch, but just something that's going to hold it for a week or two. The Bears are doing things right now, and Foreman has Cleveland, Arizona, Atlanta to finish the fantasy season. He's a decent ad, is all I had to say about that. So it's getting tough right now because normally we're not flexing on ads at this point. But yeah, I mean, who knew that the Chicago Bears were going to, again, everything doesn't make sense right now. We're in bizarro world in the NFL. So what didn't make sense makes sense, and what made sense before doesn't anymore. So, I mean, what do you have to lose? If you're adding a guy, who knows? Like, again, everyone's got a story. We've heard them all where rando wins you a fantasy championship. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but who knows? It takes one injury, one massive start that just goes out of nowhere. Maybe we have a snow game coming up that all they do is run the ball, which, that would drive me crazy. Deshaun Jackson circa 2010, I think. I got PTSD on those kind of games.
That was the Shady McCoy blow-up game.
Yeah, and that didn't help me out very much. Too bad we didn't have that show back then.
Foreman, real quick. Typical Bears. I live in Chicago. Growing up, I liked every other team but the Bears. I realized they never hired sharp football people. It's still to a degree true. I accept them now. But they bring in Foreman. I'm like, smart. You bring in a guy. He was very good taking over Derrick Henry when he broke his foot a couple of years ago. When McCaffrey got traded, he was very good. They made a smart ad, bring in Foreman. Week 1, they play him a few snaps. They deactivate him for the next 5 or 6 games until Herbert got hurt. Oh, we've got Deontay Foreman. He's better than our other backs. And then it's like, I had rostered him. I drafted him in a lot of leagues. And it's like, seriously? You're going to bench him. You're seriously going to bench him. So I got to cut him. And it's like, I'm cutting a player who is an excellent player and should be producing. But of course, the Bears don't know. The Bears know less than a lot of us know. And that's not a surprise that they put these other clowns out there. And then one more side note. Roshan Johnson has that 71% usage and all those touches against Minnesota. And my teammates at Rotowire are doing the depth charts, and they reached out to me. They go, do we move Roshan to number 1? I go, no. I go, it's game plan specific, because when they played Minnesota earlier in the year, Minnesota, they blitz from everywhere. You have no idea where they're coming from. Usually the pass protection for Justin Fields isn't a big deal because he could break contain. But they learned in that first game, the game Fields got hurt, you don't know where the blitz is coming from. So you have to have a pass protector. Khalil Herbert can't pass protect, and Foreman was out with an ankle. And then the other thing was the screen game. He also is, he's good in that capacity. So the reason he played 71% of the snaps is because that matchup, they couldn't put Herbert out there. And so I told my Rotowire teammates that, and they kept him low on the depth chart, and I'm glad they did, because this week he got 1 touch. It was at the very end of the game, and it was out of question.
Man, this is the kind of stuff. I mean,
I also find these
this is why you tune the Dar Show, but this is why you follow Jim for the rest of the season. I mean, probably follow him in the summer too, because I'm sure he's got some great ideas on cool places to hang out.
These types of backs specifically, like I mean, I always load up a little more on running backs, because when it gets cold and you get the cold weather, or the rain or those unpredictable weather things, they go to running backs. Well, it's not necessarily your Jamar Gibbs that you want to like, or Jameer Gibbs, that you want to kind of feature out there because they're more of precise guys. But you have a guy like Foreman. What is he, like 6 foot 240? Yeah, like he's a
240.
He's a big
meat and potatoes.
Yeah. You're just like, get the ball, go downhill. He knows how to make that one cut and go. Like that's like LeGarrette Blount was like famous for that. Leonard Fournette in the most recent years has been really famous for being like playoff Lenny. Well, there's a reason why they're big boys. They get the ball. It's hard to slow a big boy down when you don't have footing. Like that's just like,
it's just science.
It's just
science.
The big boy's ball and you don't have feet. Like you're gonna get run over.
Teddy's got his start here. Demarcus Robinson, LA Rams, wideout. 0% owned, 0% started. Veteran wideout was targeted 10 times last week and now has 15 targets and 2 scores in his last 2 games. While he and Stafford only connected on 3 of 10 targets, Robinson has shown a knack for stepping in when needed. Add to that the fact that Tutu Atwell may miss some time in concussion protocol and the Cake Commanders D matchup, and you could see the 28-year-old megastar. Oh, he just said star. I thought he said megastar. Alongside Cooper Kupp and cousin Puka with enough targets for him to make an actual impact. Monitor the situation. Kind of like what we talked about last week with Chris. Like, if they're not healthy, start them. If they're both healthy, forget I even had this comment. So we'll have to pay attention to that.
I think
Jim,
there was a little like
Steve.
Demarcus Robinson, who just played last season in Baltimore as their just abysmal receiving core. Like, he came back to Baltimore that game with something to prove. And, you know, Jim just alluded to the James Conner Pittsburgh Steelers game. When they played their former teams, Odell against the Rams in that same game, they want to make an impact. Like, he was on the field for 86% of the snaps that game. That is unsustainable for Demarcus Robinson, peeps. Like, even if Tutu Atwell is going out, I see where he's going on this. Demarcus Robinson, I feel like, is touchdown dependent. And even if he's getting those targets, he is cashing in on a low percentage of those targets. So if his targets even get cut in half, in a quarter, I don't see a lot of catches going that way. But maybe this is like what you need if you're struggling with like a whole bunch of injuries. Like, maybe you have Justin Jefferson, who's probably going to be out again. Like, injuries are going to play a factor in this. I'm not a big fan of this match or this ad, actually.
Okay. Yeah. So go ahead, Jim. You got something?
I sent to you Demarcus Robinson is mine.
You had no. Wait, you've got it on the starts. I think. No, you got it on starts though. We're
there only 3. Oh, I did. So I thought there were 3. Okay, so that was all right. So there's a different one.
We're gonna get there. So we're gonna get into. That's okay. I got you. I thought that was a little bit tricky too, but we're allowed to have 2 guys on the same show.
Gotcha.
Final clip, and then we are gonna have some comments too. Sneaky starts. Keeping it going here. Thank you, internet, for making all these things possible. Jim, you basically.
I think he has to go next because I just said I hate this ad. I have to hear what the other side of this argument is.
All right,
Sean McVay. Look, he's got Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams is not a good running back. He's got Puka Nacua. Whatever. I get it. Puka Nacua. If he didn't have Sean McVay, he'd have 40 yards a season. Now that I think back at this, and really, beginning of the year, moment of clarity, when Nacua went off, and then later when Kyren Williams was a superstar, I'm like, oh my God, Cooper Kupp, what would he have been without Sean McVay? Davis Allen comes in and has a game, right? Well, Demarcus Robinson is seeing snaps at least 60% in 3 weeks. He's got Stafford throwing the ball 40 times a game. If Stafford's throwing 40 times a game and McVay decides, I want Robinson to get the ball, guess who's getting the ball? He's still getting 10 targets to Nacua. He's still getting 10 targets to Kupp. But with 40 passes a game, if Tutu Atwell, he's actually getting phased out already. But if McVay wants you to get the ball, you're going to be open, and Stafford's hot. It's that simple. And they're playing Washington. They traded away to 2 pass rushers, so Stafford to be clean all day. They can't cover anybody. So it's a sneaky start. It's not this is not like if you have a 10-team league. This is if you have 12-team league, a flex, injuries, problems. Roll the dice on them. but it's Sean McVay, and that's the whole point. McVay has taken my respect to such a level what he's done this year.
How do you
Do
really
you
feel
like
though,
him
Tim?
as like a ceiling person, or is he more of like
10 PPR points. 10 PPR points. Hope for 10, and you're good.
Wow.
Hope for 10. Hope for 10. Will you get it? No, he had 13 last week. He had 15 the prior week, 3 the week before that. It was his first week acclimated, and he only had 2 targets in that game. Then he bumped up to 5. Then he bumped up to 10 in an overtime game. 77 plays ran. But again, it's just Sean McVay. If he likes you and he's going to send you out on routes, he's going to get you open. It's not even a question. You're open. Right?
Do you ever worry about those games? Like, I look at like the gravy matchups and stuff like that, and especially with wide receivers, I often worry that it gets out of hand too quickly, and then they go to like those jumbo sets, and they're like, we just need to like bleed the clock a little bit. Do you ever look at that stuff, or are you like how far into matchups do you go with that kind of stuff?
Well, I know McVay is going to run 11 personnel till the wheels fall off. So that's three receivers are on the field. That's going to be 80% of the plays. So he's going to have receivers. It's his offense. He doesn't even carry the personnel to want to go consistently heavy. And the guys he has are hybrids. Like Tyler Higbee, he can block a little bit, but he's a receiver. But he brings in guys with receiving profiles that can chip a little bit. So it's not bringing in these 6 offensive linemen to come in and grind somebody down. So in Washington, as bad as they are, they can score points because you could pass on the Rams. That's the one thing. The Rams cannot cover. And Jahan Dotson probably has a game this week, right? So there's definitely a world where Washington, because you've seen it this year,
Yeah,
they're crazy. Bieniemy's a good coach too. And he's figuring out how to get he really did wonders with Sam Howell. Howell's not a good quarterback. Those first 5 or 6 weeks, he realized I got to fix something. And he did. The fix was get it out quickly. Design routes quick. And all of a sudden now Howell's not getting hit, right? So this could be, the Rams should win. I like him at a teaser leg. You tease him down to from 6.5 to 0.5. Like him at a teaser leg, but this game should be high scoring.
There you go. So Admiral, you got your answer in that you got a sneaky way of getting your answer. My start this week, we're going back to the team on Jim's t-shirt, the Kansas City Chiefs. Jerick McKinnon. His cousin, Nate McKinnon, who's in the NHL, is tearing it up in the NHL. And with the New England Patriots coming up, Mahomes may very well go back to Big Mac to keep the ball spread out. He can't possibly feed the ball to Tony. And Kelsey will get some extra coverage. Rashee Rice will be the main target downfield. And depending on the health of Pacheco, McKinnon could be a threat. Now, I've been carrying McKinnon for a little bit this season. Good pass catching option. He's got a couple good bursts of speeds in him as well. And especially against New England, where, all you're going to hear about all week, for the rest of this week anyway, is Bill Belichick and everything going on. That's going to have the circus. It's going to dominate. They're obviously going to have a game plan. But you know what? The Chiefs need to get back to winning, and they need to get back to being creative in the ways that made them good. And I think a guy like Jerick McKinnon could be a nice little sneaky start. I'm likely starting him. He actually helped me last week, and I'm going to roll the dice again. I'm in the other side, playing for the first pick on the consolation side, but you know what? Isn't a terrible play at all.
Real quick on McKinnon, the beat writers were very adamant in Kansas City. They know his age. They know his durability. The plan was to use him in the latter part of the season to ramp him up for the playoffs. The things that McKinnon does, McKinnon runs legit routes. He runs complicated routes. Andy Reid could do play calls that he can't do with anybody else when McKinnon's in the game. The other thing McKinnon does really well, if you ever see what Patrick Mahomes is on the run and in scramble mode, McKinnon gets to the second level, and he knows how to mirror Mahomes, exactly where to be in terms of to give him a throw back or a throw forward lane. It's a real nuanced thing he does. And as they get closer to the postseason, they're going to be using him a lot more. I love that call, Ryan.
He's the new Mecole Hardman, sorry. Except he's a running back instead of a receiver. Steve, who do you got, buddy?
We've kind of been going full circle on this show. My sneaky start is Odell. And it seems weird saying that he's the sneaky start because I feel like he should be started more frequently. Who would have thought at 31 years old we'd be talking about Odell Beckham as a sneaky start, but he's owned in just 52% of sleeper leagues, started in just 16%. So I often wonder with these things, who else are you starting instead of him? Like, I get it. He wasn't good off the start of the year. He probably broke people's trust. I probably drafted him a little too early, thinking he was going to be like the surefire number one, didn't plan for injuries. I think it's time to put the trust back into him. Clearly, 4 of his last 5 outings, he's put up over 10 fantasy points in just standard leagues. The Jags have been soft against the wideouts. Jim had mentioned the corner situation going there. Clearly no safety support. Look for those, like you said, double moves. I think he brings a slant to the house this game. That's kind of like vintage Odell. I think he's going to have one of those ones where maybe the safeties are doubling Zay. Maybe the safeties are coming to support in the run, and he just takes a quick one for a house call. I think I sound like Captain Obvious here, kind of like Ryan with his very obvious ones, but the numbers suggest this is actually a sneaky start because people aren't starting him, right? It's not that this is some profound thing, but if you have him on your team, I want to know, who are you starting instead of him? Like, is this like everybody's playing 8-team leagues or something like that, where it's just like Keenan Allen and, I don't know, Devontae Adams only? And it's like, well, I'm not going to take either of those guys out, but everyone else, like, why aren't you starting him?
Yeah, he's looked good. I mean, I've been watching a lot of Ravens football this year. I got Lamar, I've got Zay, and I've even got the defense. So yes. Baltimore, I've been a big fan of you this season, and OBJ has looked good. And it's getting to that time of the season. Here's another thing that you haven't really brought up, Steve. You talk about that he's 31 years old. But you got to say the word vet. You have to, because he's been around the league. He knows what it looks like this deep in the season. He knows what it's going to take to get to the other side of the playoffs, where it's going to take, to win those games, clinch a division, clinch the conference, all those sorts of things. He knows what his role is. He knows he's not the top guy, but he knows what it's going to take to make sure that his team's going to get a W. And I mean, OBJ is one of the best to do it. And this late in the season, when you got Lamar and you got Zay, and like there's so many toys right now to watch on that team. And I mean, if you've got him as like your third option, geez, you're going to get smoked. So yeah, I love that pick. That's great.
The other thing you have to think about, like, he's not seeing the field, or he wasn't seeing the field when he was coming off that injury. Coaches like to have veteran guys out there who are going to make the right play. I mean, there was an interview that he just did. I'm sure you guys saw the highlights of Tylan Wallace taking the house call on a punt. They were interviewing Odell, and Odell was like, oh yeah, earlier in the game, he made like a kind of like a big mistake. And I just walked over to him and said, your number's going to get called. You're going to have to make a play in this game. Keep your head in the game. Now, I'm sure he says that to every receiver, every teammate, whether they make a play or not. But that's that veteran leadership that when you see a guy doing stuff like that, you're like, get this man on the field and let's make him impact the game. Like, he is so electrifying when he catches a ball, even if it's like, a 4-yard slant. He gets the ball and people are like, let's go. This is Odell. Like, he is such a persona that it gets the whole team involved. So, yeah, he's been a breath of fresh air. He's definitely a diva, but he gets, that bad rap about like, throwing a helmet into the netting or whatever. He's not that guy. He is the guy that
he's a baller.
Mates up. Yeah,
he's a baller. We're gonna finish up on Ted's, and then we'll be very kind. Jim's given us a ton of his time, and we want to make sure he's even got a life after this too. Ted went on his sneaky start with Ty Chandler, running back for the Vikings. 29% owned, 5% started. Came in for cleanup duty when the extremely average Alexander Madison, who thought we'd say that, left with an ankle injury. If Madison is missing any time, look for Chandler to carry the load. The Vikings offense self-destructed last week in an ugly tilt against the Raiders. Yeah, we all remember that. But the Bengals defense has looked just as gross, save for a tripping up Gardner Minshew and the Colts last week. This could be the suck bowl battle, he says. But look for Chandler to get going for the Vikings against one of the league's worst defenses because, well, someone has to. Man, sometimes I wish Ted would be able to say that because I feel like he would have done that more justice. But, he's got a point there. So a couple of quick things too, guys. we've covered, I think, every player that you guys have asked about. So I don't want to get into. Feel free to rewatch the show because I think we've got answers based on what we've talked about. But Jim, what do you think about Ted's pick there?
I mean, obviously, a running back with volume is always king in fantasy football. And if there's going to be no Madison, you're looking at borderline 20 touches. And that offensive line in Minnesota is excellent. They're great run blocking. They can pass block. And this matchup, like you guys said, against the Bengals. The Bengals stepped up last week against Zach Moss. I really don't know how they did it, but they did. It's not sustainable. They have not played well all year. And I don't think they're going to come in fearing the Minnesota run game. Volume is king. Chandler gets it done.
I was going to ask one final question, but I can always just DM you this question. It was a who are you listening to question, like is it Drake or someone else? But we'll get to that afterwards. This is actually a good question. I feel like I have the answer to this because I was just talking about this today, and we'll finish with this one. I think it's a pretty obvious question that we've answered, probably not just us, but a lot of football people. I guess we're football people now. Is Derrick Henry going to have a big decline after this season? Had him a couple years now and just waiting for the shoe to drop. I mean, is he not 30 now or turning 30?
Yeah, I'm trying to check his age right here. So 29, he'll turn 30. Yeah, the 4th of the new year. So a few weeks. You know, it's tough. His broken tackle rate is still over the 80th percentile. His yards after contact is still in that same range. The offensive line has done him no favors. They have a horrific, right, offensive line. And we've seen it when he's been in home games, when the Titans play better. In 2 of the last weeks, he carried the mail. Now, on the road, they've been worse, so he's been worse. Game script's usually bad. Yes, he's declining, but his peripherals are still solid. It's the line that's crushing him. So if he goes back to the same line, yeah, his upside's real capped, and he can't do this for much longer. But if their line somehow they invest him in the offseason, you could see him being a top 12 running back one more time.
Yeah, so definitely one. You think he's got one more left?
Was he on a contract year?
I'll tell you in a second. Shows
I don't know
contract.
what the numbers are.
4-year, $50 million in 2020. So 20, 21, 22, 23.
This is it.
This got to be
so
it.
He's a free agent.
Ooh, yes. So if he goes to Dallas. Where he's going to Dallas. He's going to Dallas. Pollard's back to the change of pace role. Henry's the lead guy. Jerry brings him in. Derrick Henry in that scenario, he probably only gets you 900 to 1,000 yards because Pollard's going to be significantly involved, but he does probably get you 10 touchdowns.
Minimum.
Yeah.
I only thought about that because trade deadline was coming up. There was a couple of Ravens players who were a little banged up, and people were clamoring for getting Derrick Henry, and I was like, yeah, I know he's not what he used to be, but that Titans O-line is just abysmal. Like you see his offseason training program, he's still got power, he's still got vision, he's still got the cut ability. Are the wheels going to fall off? Yes. And when they do, they're gone. Like I don't think a guy like that who has been carrying the ball like 400 times back to his Alabama days is going to be kind of like phased out like Frank Gore. But man, Dallas wouldn't that be a fun last riding spot for him? Like I really hope that happens so we can clip this. That was a really quick one off the top of your head.
I like
that. So much fun.
Man, they're gonna get more primetime games, and I think they have all of them this season. So I don't know. They're gonna add games to the schedule, I think, just so the Cowboys can feature that combo: CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, and Derrick Henry.
Wow.
You know what? Sign me up for that. That's some football I could watch.
What you failed to say in there was that O-line, like, still is ridiculous. Like, they're still probably a top 5 O-line, and you get all of those weapons, like. That's the Super Bowl contending Cowboys that are not pretenders. They're for real.
Well, we'll see what they do in this season. This has been a lot of fun, Steve, as probably an understatement. Anytime we get to chat it up with Jim for an hour and a bit. I mean, I've been waiting for this day all season, and it delivered. It delivered. I mean, this is a fun show. We have a good time. But I mean, the fact that we kind of go everywhere on this show. We bring a little bit of a different spin to everything. And Jim just has like an answer for everything, which is so awesome. Like, it doesn't matter if we're digging, we're finding like this absolute diamond in the rough, or we're finding like some piece of dirt. Like, doesn't matter who it is, you're dialed in and you bring in the enthusiasm. I say this, there's a reason that this guy is who he is in football. And I mean, just such a great guy to chat with. He's rocking our gear. We love it. I mean, hopefully your wife is okay with you wearing that shirt, because you're a pretty ripped dude, and I mean, we definitely didn't send you the large, that's for sure. So,
schmedium.
Yeah, a little bit of schmedium there. Jim, I mean, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. We do appreciate you taking your time out. You're a couple hours ahead of us, so I mean, basically it's about dinner time for us, and you're probably going to catch up on some highlights and stuff and hit the hay soon. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. I love the work you do, and you're friends, and I'm glad to hang with you whenever I can.
Yeah, we're going to have to get him out to Kelowna somehow here. I don't know how we're going to do it. Cross countries, cross coast. We'll make it happen somehow.
Easy.
Excellent. On behalf of Steve and Jim, I'm Ryan. This is That Helps No One FantasyCast. Kind of retro version, I think. Special episode with Jim Coventry of Rotowire and SiriusXM. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. If we didn't get to your questions, hopefully we answered them in the stuff we brought up. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Good luck in the fantasy playoffs this week. Ooh, it's a stressful time.